Well, this is a beautiful Monday morning, and we're in Jerome, Arizona. We got in yesterday evening. I'm watching the sun rise up over the distant red canyons and cliffs to the east, over where Sedona is. And in the middle is a valley, a river valley, with the town of Cottonwood. And Jerome here sits on the slopes of the mountains. So we're on a little short vacation. I took the little Brother Charger 11 typewriter with me as a travel typewriter. It's the first time I've taken it on a trip since I've only had it for a month or so. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but for now I'm enjoying watching the sunrise over Jerome, Arizona. Well, this vacation trip that we made to Arizona this April, I decided was a good opportunity to talk a little bit about traveling with typewriters and using a typewriter on your travels and trips to use to write with, to write letters with, to blog with, or to write a journal with, whatever you like to do with typewriters. When I first started traveling with typewriters was about 7 or 8 years ago, and we traveled to the Southern California area and rented a condo on the beach in Oceanside, and I brought my little Royal Mercury, and I call that my beach typer. It's a small portable with a clamshell plastic case that fits on it, so it has an integral handle. The bottom of the typewriter is sealed up, so it's a kind of a clean design that's good for travel, fairly lightweight. Not the quietest typing machine there is, but when you're outside on the beach, that's not really a problem. So I used that Royal Mercury for quite a few years as my travel typewriter, but these days, since I have more portable typewriters in my collection, I figured it was time to try out another typewriter as a travel typewriter. So I've chosen for this year's trip this Brother Charger 11, which I acquired about maybe a little over a month ago from a thrift store in Albuquerque. It does have an integral plastic clamshell case that fits over it, and it is sealed up on the bottom. What I learned about it early on, though, was it was difficult to get the hard plastic case to fit over the back of the typewriter, especially the left side. And I only learned yesterday when I tried fitting the case on and carried it out here in the garden, and the case was not fit on properly, and the two little plastic hooks in the case that clip underneath here to secure the case are broken now. So the case doesn't really work anymore as a secure way of carrying it unless I put a strap or a belt around it. So I've opted now, at least for carrying it from our room in the bed and breakfast out to the garden here, I've opted to, when I carry this machine, I've opted to, you put the little locking lever up into the locking position, move the carriage to the right, and it'll lock itself, and then you want to push the carriage return lever down into the stored position. Once you have it like that, you can carry the typewriter. I find it most comfortable to carry it on the left side like this and carry it under my arm like that. It's a little more secure than trying to carry it on the bottom, because the back of the typewriter, this panel right here on the back of the carriage, is a little thin and flimsy, and the front of the typewriter doesn't really give you much purchase to hold it either, because the space bar is right there. So I find carrying it by the left area where the carriage return lever has been folded down is a good secure way to carry it out to the patio, to the garden area to type. And of course I have a couple sheets of paper, blank paper already threaded in it, so I'm good. And the correction tape cartridge, you always need that. So the thing with writing with typewriters is, you know, you could obviously be using a journal book and a pen, and it would certainly be a little more portable and a little less troublesome. You can write indoors and not bother anybody. But I find there's a certain je ne sais quoi about typewriters. Being able to sit out here and mechanically imprint ink on paper as a way of writing that kind of formalizes your thoughts. I find it feels like you're committing words to paper more definitively when you're typing them than if you're handwriting them. Handwriting seems like such a preliminary method of writing. It seems so easy to scratch it out and rewrite it. Whereas when it's typed, even if it's a first draft, a rough draft, you know you're going to go back and edit some more. There is a sense that it is more final because it's mechanically printed, and it's a psychological thing, at least with me. It helps me to write a little bit more succinctly up front, knowing that it's being printed onto paper. And of course, you know, I'm a gadget freak and I love typewriters, and I like having an excuse to take a typewriter somewhere on a trip. So I'm sitting with a fish pond with a little waterfall, making some water noise, 2 of them. And there's a little bit of traffic noise from the road down the hill behind the property here, so a little bit of noise. I hope it's not too distracting. But my thoughts are in regards to traveling with a typewriter. And I learned this lesson a couple years ago in the fall of 2015 when we took a long road trip around the western United States, and I at the time wanted to take a typewriter, and I decided to take one of the smallest typewriters in my collection, which was the Hermes Rocket, thinking that having a small size would make it much more efficient to carry. I ended up carrying the typewriter on the passenger seat behind the driver's seat in my vehicle. It was a convenient place from which to grab the typewriter once we got to where we were going. But I found that even though I'm traveling, the size of the typewriter wasn't really an issue. In other words, I could have brought a bigger machine. There's plenty of room in the back seat. The real issue is about how easy is it to carry. And you're only going to be carrying the typewriter from your vehicle to your room, hotel room, or wherever you're staying, and from there to back to the vehicle and maybe to another venue that you might want to sit outside and type. So it's really about how large of a machine can you comfortably carry for a short distance from your vehicle or from your property where you're staying at. And given those parameters, I found it was probably easily carryable, a middle-sized machine like a Smith Corona Silent, or a larger semi-portable typewriter, a bigger one, is just as likely to be a valid travel typewriter as an ultra-portable. And the benefits of a larger typewriter, of course, is that you're going to have a machine with probably a better touch, maybe better mechanical reliability, more features, tabs, ribbon color selector, carriage return lever on both knobs, etc., etc. Carriage release lever, I mean, on both knobs of the carriage. But you'll have more features of the typewriter, making it easier to use. So those are some of the considerations you might want to think about if you're going to be traveling with a typewriter. Is how far are you going to be traveling? Are you going to be carrying the typewriter? Do you really need the typewriter to be ultra portable? Do you really need it to be able to fit into a backpack or shoulder bag, or can you carry it by its handle a short distance? For this trip, I did choose a much smaller typewriter, a Brother. But it's not really because I needed a small typewriter. It's more about this was a new machine to my collection, and it's very similar in form factor and features to my other travel typewriter, the Royal Mercury. And so I wanted to compare it and see how it worked, and again, a good excuse to bring it. But maybe on the next trip I make, I might find myself bringing a larger machine, maybe a Smith Corona medium-sized portable, perhaps. We'll have to see. But it's fun traveling with typewriters as part of your regular kit. And I'm speaking from the context
of travel by car, of course. Traveling by airplane or the typewriter is a whole nother subject matter, which I really haven't done yet. But as far as traveling by vehicle, it's easily doable, and the size of the machine doesn't really matter as much. So this morning before breakfast, I wandered out here to the very north end of the property, and I had a really good view of the vistas in the distance, the valley where Cottonwood, Arizona is, and the far red canyons and cliffs up by Sedona where the sun had risen above them. And it was a really nice setting with which to use this machine to write some stuff. And I ended up typing a blog article which I posted on my blog about what is it like typewriting in the year 2017 in a former mining town in the West. And is there any thoughts that you could find that might parallel those two experiences? And what I thought about was the idea of how these former mining towns have kind of been repurposed. They're no longer being used to house a community of workers whose job it is to extract minerals from the ground to make billionaires richer in some far distant city. But they've been repurposed as tourist traps, tourist meccas, and the allure of these tourist meccas is really about, we go into an old town like this, and what we enjoy is the contrast between what an old mining town represents and what our modern lives are like. It's really the contrast between the old and the new is why these kinds of towns are so popular. And how these old buildings have been repurposed as bars and restaurants and gift shops. And so there is some kind of a parallel between that and how mechanical typewriting has been repurposed, if you will. We've repurposed manual typewriting as the tool of the office or the student or the professional writer. From that to what we in the typewriter community enjoy them as, which is a remembrance of things past and a way of enjoying technology that is non-electromagnetic, strictly mechanical. And we enjoy the writing experience with these tools. In the way that back in the younger days of my generation, people hated manual typewriters because it was a chore to write with them, to write a college paper or term paper. But we enjoy them now because we're not having to use them for work, but for play, really. And so there is this change in typewriter usage that kind of parallels how these little tourist trap towns in the West that were once mining towns have been repurposed for other uses now. So this is Joe Van Cleve, and I am traveling through the West in Arizona, Jerome, Arizona, a former mining town, with my little portable typewriter on vacation. Until next time, you have yourselves a great day.